The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Thornton estate, casting golden patterns across the marble floors. Eleanor Reed moved through the grand hallways with quiet confidence, knowing every corner of this mansion by heart. 8 years she had worked here, polishing railings, arranging flowers, maintaining a life of luxury she would never personally know. But Eleanor had never felt like just another staff member. Not since the day she met Nathan. She paused outside the library door, listening to the soft humming that told her everything she needed to know. Nathan was there, sitting in his favorite spot by the window, rocking gently as he did when the world felt too loud. Eleanor knocked 3 times slowly, the way he preferred. 1, 2, 3. A pattern. Predictable. Safe. "Good morning, Nathan," Eleanor said softly, stepping inside. The 10-year-old boy didn't look up immediately, his fingers tracing precise patterns on his tablet. But then, slowly, his hand reached out toward her, not for a hug or words, but reaching for the small yarn bracelet on her wrist. Blue and green, his favorite colors, woven together in a simple braid. She had made it 2 years ago during one of his difficult afternoons, and he had never forgotten it. Eleanor sat beside him, close but not touching, respecting the invisible boundary he needed. Outside the window, the estate garden stretched endlessly, perfectly manicured hedges worth more than Eleanor would earn in 10 lifetimes. But inside this small bubble, none of that mattered. "Your mother wants you downstairs for breakfast," Eleanor said gently. Nathan's rocking increased, a sign of anxiety. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a smooth stone, dark blue with white swirls, placing it in his palm. "Your pocket stone for today. When things get hard, you hold this. And remember, I'm here." Nathan's fingers closed around it, his breathing slowing. As Eleanor turned to leave, she heard it, soft as a whisper. "Eleanor." Her name, from his lips. It happened so rarely that each time felt like a gift. The breakfast room was all crystal chandeliers and imported china, atmosphere so cold it could frost glass. Victoria Thornton sat at the head of the table, posture perfect, blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. "You're late," she said, though they were precisely on time. Eleanor had learned that Victoria's criticisms weren't about accuracy, but control. She simply nodded, helping Nathan settle with his specific placement, the fork turned just so, plate exactly 6 inches from the edge. Robert Thornton entered, phone to his ear discussing mergers, silver threading through his dark hair. He had kind eyes, Eleanor thought, but they rarely looked too deeply at uncomfortable truths. "Nathan, sit up straight," Victoria commanded. "Try to eat like a normal child." Eleanor's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. After breakfast, Eleanor moved through her daily work with practiced efficiency, managing the 30-room mansion's intricate schedules. She brought Nathan his lunch in the library, sandwich cut into perfect squares, tomatoes removed, these small acts her language of love. The afternoon stretched peacefully until Eleanor, folding towels in the laundry room, heard the scream. Victoria's voice, high-pitched and sharp, slicing through the quiet. Eleanor ran, heart pounding, finding Victoria in the master bedroom like a storm about to break. Robert stood near the door, wary. The jewelry box sat open on the dresser, empty space where something precious should have been. "It's gone," Victoria said, deadly quiet. "The Thornton ring. My grandmother's ring. Worth $3 million. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She had cleaned this room that morning, had seen the ring there, the enormous diamond catching light. "When did you last see it?" Robert asked. "This morning. I wore it to breakfast, then placed it back." Victoria's eyes swept the room and landed on Eleanor. Present, convenient, The air changed, atmosphere dropping before lightning. Eleanor saw the calculation in Victoria's eyes, the path her thoughts were taking. The maid. The help. "Eleanor, you cleaned this room today?" "Yes, ma'am. Around 9 o'clock. "Did you see the ring?" "Yes, ma'am. In the jewelry box." "Did you touch it?" "No, ma'am. I never touch your jewelry." Victoria took a step closer. "Search her room. Search her belongings. Now!" Eleanor felt the floor tilt. "Mrs. Thornton, I didn't take anything. I would never." "Then you won't mind us checking. Call security, Robert." "Victoria, that seems extreme. $3 million, Robert. If Eleanor is innocent, she has nothing to fear." But Eleanor did fear. When the powerful decide you're guilty, innocence becomes irrelevant. She stood in that opulent bedroom in her simple grey uniform, feeling 8 years of trust crumbling. "Please, I didn't take anything." "Don't bring Nathan into this." Victoria snapped before Eleanor could finish. "He's not well. His word means nothing." The cruelty hung in the air. Security arrived within minutes, escorting Eleanor to her modest third-floor room. She stood in the hallway as they searched, drawers opened, her few belongings examined. Some books, photos of her late mother, yarn for small crafts. A life compressed into one room after 8 years. Then one guard stopped. His hand emerged from her canvas bag. There, glinting like an accusation, was the Thornton ring. Eleanor's heart stopped. "No, I didn't. I never—" Victoria appeared in the doorway, triumph unmistakable on her face. "Well, I suppose that settles it." The world tilted. Someone had planted it. But who? Why? And how could she prove innocence when the evidence sat right there, solid and damning? Robert stood behind his wife, face pale and troubled, but said nothing. His silence was its own verdict. "Call the police," Victoria said. "I want her arrested for theft." One thought echoed through Eleanor's mind. Nathan. Where was Nathan? She thought of the blue and green bracelet on her wrist, of the smooth stone, of 8 years of small moments that had meant everything to her and apparently nothing to anyone else. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Detective Sarah Morrison and Officer Chen sat across from Eleanor, while Victoria stood nearby, arms crossed like a judge. "The ring was discovered in your belongings," Detective Morrison began. "Can you explain how it came to be there?" "I can't, because I didn't take it. Someone planted it." The detective's tone suggested she'd heard this defense 1,000 times. Victoria stepped forward. "Eleanor has had complete access for 8 years. She was alone in my bedroom at least 20 minutes this morning." "That's my job," Eleanor said, panic rising. "Of course I'm alone in the rooms. That doesn't make me a thief." "The ring was found in your bag," Officer Chen said quietly, "with your fingerprints on the bag." "Of course my fingerprints are on my own bag, but not on the ring. Check the ring." Detective Morrison stood. "We'll need you to come to the station for formal questioning and processing." Processing. The word hit like a physical blow. They were going to arrest her. "Wait." Robert finally spoke, voice uncertain. "Is an arrest really necessary?" Victoria whirled. "She stole a family heirloom worth millions, Robert. Of course it's necessary." Detective Morrison's voice was firm. "We have probable cause. Ms. Reed, please stand." The metal handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Cold, tight, unforgiving. "You have the right to remain silent," Officer Chen began. As they led her through the house, Eleanor saw other staff watching. Maria covered her mouth. James looked away quickly. And at the top of the stairs, Nathan stood frozen, hands gripping the banister, eyes wide. Their eyes met, and Eleanor saw him beginning to rock, overwhelmed. "Nathan, go to your room, now!" Victoria commanded. But Nathan didn't move. His mouth opened and closed. Words wouldn't come. His hands began to flutter, a meltdown building. "Nathan, sweetie," Eleanor called out. "It's okay. It's going to be okay." "Be quiet," Victoria snapped. "Nathan, I said go to your room." The boy let out a keening sound and bolted, not to his room but toward Eleanor, arms reaching. He made it down 3 stairs before Victoria caught him, holding him back as he struggled. "No, no, no, Eleanor, Eleanor, Eleanor," he repeated desperately. "Get her out of here. You're making this worse." They pulled Eleanor toward the door, and the last thing she saw was Nathan's face twisted in anguish and Victoria's arms restraining him. 8 years of trust, destroyed in one morning. Eleanor felt tears streaming as they guided her into the police car. Through the window, she saw neighbors pause and stare. By evening, everyone would know. The Thorntons' maid, arrested for theft. At the station, processing was mechanical and humiliating. Fingerprints, photographs, belongings locked away, including her blue and green bracelet. The holding cell was small and grey, a metal bench and toilet offering no privacy. Hours passed. No lawyer, because she couldn't afford one. No friendly face, because she had no one. Her mother had died 3 years ago, her only family. Finally, after dark, Detective Morrison appeared. "Ms. Reed, you'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. Do you have a lawyer?" "No, I can't afford one. The court will appoint a public defender." Eleanor looked up, searching for sympathy. "I didn't take that ring. Someone put it in my bag. Please, you have to believe me." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "That's for the courts to decide, Ms. Reed." The night stretched endlessly. Every time Eleanor closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face, his panic, heard his desperate repetition of her name. That hurt more than anything. Morning came with harsh lights and metal doors clanging. A young man approached her in the courtroom, rumpled suit, coffee stain on his tie. "Ms. Reed, I'm David Patterson, your public defender. I have 3 minutes. Did you take the ring?" "No, I was framed." He sighed, a man who'd heard this too many times. "The evidence is strong. Ring in your possession, opportunity and access. The DA will ask for significant bail. I'll argue for release on your own recognizance, but don't get your hopes up. This is just arraignment. We'll build a defense later. Right now, we're trying to get you out of jail." The bailiff called court to order. Judge Margaret Chen entered, silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed papers and looked up with an expression giving nothing away. Case 4792, The People versus Eleanor Marie Reed, grand theft in the 1st degree. The prosecutor stood, polished and confident. "Your Honor, the defendant was found in possession of stolen property valued at $3 million, taken from her employer's home where she had unrestricted access. We request bail of $500,000. David fumbled with papers. "Your Honor, my client has no prior record. She's lived and worked here 8 years. Not a flight risk. We request release on her own recognizance." Judge Chen looked at Eleanor. "Do you understand the charges?" "Yes, Your Honor, but I'm innocent. I didn't take that ring." "That's what the trial will determine. Given the value and strength of evidence, I'm setting bail at $250,000. Next case." The gavel fell. Eleanor felt the courtroom spin. She couldn't come up with $250, let alone thousands. Freedom had a price tag she couldn't meet. As they led her back toward the cells, she glimpsed news vans outside through a window. The story had gotten out. Billionaire's maid arrested for theft. Eleanor Reed, who'd never had a parking ticket, was now infamous. 3 days later, Eleanor was transferred to county jail, assigned to a cell with 3 other women. Keisha, awaiting trial for drug possession, looked at Eleanor's uniform and said, "First time. Head down, keep to yourself. Don't trust anyone." but Eleanor barely heard, thinking about Nathan, wondering if he was eating, sleeping, if anyone understood his needs. David visited once. The evidence is strong. DA is offering a plea deal. 3 to 5 years, full restitution. For something I didn't do. Better than 10 to 15 at trial. The jury won't be sympathetic. I handle 50 cases at a time, Eleanor. I can't give you what a private attorney could. Eleanor looked at this overworked lawyer and saw the truth. She was just another case file. I want to go to trial. I'm innocent. David sighed. Trial is set for 3 weeks. I'll do what I can. Days blurred together. Eleanor learned jail rhythms, slept with noise, ate flavorless food, existed in constant vigilance. On day 12, Tamika came back from a visitor. You're that maid who stole from those billionaire people. It was on the news. By evening, the whole cell block knew. No one looked at her with belief in her innocence. The night before trial, Eleanor couldn't sleep, staring at metal slats above her. Tomorrow she would try to convince 12 strangers she hadn't done what all evidence suggested. Without resource, without power, without anything except truth, which seemed the weakest defense. Morning came. They gave her donated clothes for court, a dress too big. Eleanor barely recognized her reflection, face thinner, eyes haunted, spirit broken. The courtroom was packed, reporters and spectators wanting to watch a poor woman judged for stealing from the rich. Victoria and Robert Thornton sat at the prosecution table, dressed impeccably. Victoria's eyes met Eleanor's with nothing in them. No remorse, just cold certainty. David appeared, tie still stained. The prosecution will present evidence, testimony, police report. Our defense is you were framed, but we have no proof of who or why. I'll do my best, Eleanor, but be prepared for a guilty verdict. The prosecutor, Amanda Walsh, commanded the room effortlessly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is simple. The defendant had complete access, opportunity, and trust. She betrayed that trust by stealing a $3 million family heirloom. Victoria testified, elegant in navy, voice trembling slightly. I trusted her completely. She was around my family, my son. This betrayal hurts deeply. We gave her everything, and she repaid us by stealing an irreplaceable piece of my family's history. David's cross-examination was brief. Isn't it possible someone else accessed your bedroom? No. Eleanor was the only staff member scheduled that day. Robert's testimony was uncomfortable, shorter, less certain. I don't know what to believe. Eleanor always seemed trustworthy, but the ring was in her possession. Police testimony was technical and damning. Ring found in her bag, her fingerprints, no signs anyone else had been in her room. Eleanor took the stand and told her truth, described 8 years of service, her bond with Nathan, her dedication. She swore she hadn't taken the ring, suggested she'd been framed though couldn't say who or why. Amanda Walsh's cross was brutal. You can't explain how the ring got in your bag? No, I can't. Isn't the simplest explanation that you put it there? No, because I didn't take it. You're asking the jury to believe in a mysterious conspiracy with no evidence? I'm asking them to believe I'm innocent. By the time Eleanor left the stand, she knew she'd failed to convince anyone. The jury deliberated 3 hours. When they returned, their expressions told everything before the foreman spoke. We find the defendant, Eleanor Marie Reed, guilty of grand theft in the 1st degree. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Victoria placed her hand on Robert's arm, vindicated. Eleanor felt reality fracture. Guilty. Of a crime she didn't commit. Judge Chen set sentencing for 2 weeks. Eleanor was led out in handcuffs, past reporters shouting questions, past the Thorntons in their satisfaction. Back to county jail, back to her cell where her future now consisted of years behind bars. That night, Eleanor lay on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. She had lost everything. Freedom, reputation, connection to Nathan, belief that truth mattered. The collapse was complete. But while Eleanor sat broken in that cell, something was beginning to shift outside. Michael Chen, 28 years old, fresh from law school with ideals intact, had watched the trial from the back of the courtroom. Something bothered him. The evidence was too neat, too convenient. No investigation into alternatives. It smelled wrong. That evening, Michael sat in his tiny apartment, surrounded by case files from his non-profit legal aid job, and pulled up everything on the Thornton case. News articles, court documents, property records. He made a list of questions needing answers. Why was the ring found so quickly? Why weren't other staff investigated more thoroughly? Why was Victoria so immediately certain Eleanor was guilty? Michael had grown up poor, worked 3 jobs through law school, seen how the system treated people without money. He recognized a railroad job. The next morning, he drove to county jail and requested a meeting with Eleanor Reed. After 2 hours of paperwork, he sat across from her through scratched plexiglass. "Ms. Reed, I'm Michael Chen, attorney with the Justice Project. I watched your trial, and I'd like to help you." Eleanor stared, eyes hollow. "Why?" "Because I don't think you're guilty, and someone went to a lot of trouble to make you look guilty." For the first time in weeks, Eleanor felt something stir. Not quite hope, but its distant cousin. "I can't pay you." "I know. We work pro bono. I believe in your case." Michael pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me everything. Every detail about that day, the family, anyone who might have had access to your room, anyone who might have wanted to hurt you." Eleanor began to talk about Victoria's coldness, how she resented Eleanor's bond with Nathan, about other staff members, house routines, security cameras that covered most of the estate, but had mysteriously failed to capture anyone entering the servants' quarters that day. About Nathan, their special connection, how he would sometimes wander at night. Michael wrote quickly. "The security footage. That's interesting. Who controls it?" "Head of security, Mr. Dalton. But Mrs. Thornton has access. She reviews it regularly." "And the footage from your hallway was missing?" "They said the camera malfunctioned that day. Just that one camera." Michael circled the note. Convenient. Over the next week, Michael worked the case intensely. He interviewed other Thornton staff, most reluctant but eventually sharing details. Maria mentioned Victoria had been agitated in days before the ring went missing, heated phone calls behind closed doors. James remembered seeing Victoria's assistant, Diane, going to the 3rd floor that day, unusual because Diane normally never went to servants' quarters. Michael subpoenaed phone records, which the Thorntons' lawyers fought hard against. He filed motions, requested evidence reviews, slowly piecing together a different picture. The breakthrough came from Nathan's former therapist, Dr. Rebecca Walsh, who'd left the Thorntons' employ 6 months before the theft. They met at a coffee shop. "I can't discuss my patient," Dr. Walsh said immediately. "I'm not asking about Nathan's treatment. I'm asking about the family environment, whether you observed anything relevant to this case." Dr. Walsh was quiet. "That little boy loved Eleanor. I've never seen a bond quite like theirs. She understood him in ways his parents never tried. And Victoria resented it. Deeply. She saw Eleanor as a threat, someone who'd stolen her son's affection." "Did she ever express that resentment directly?" "Not to me, but I saw it. In how she dismissed Eleanor's suggestions about Nathan's care, separated them when together, spoke about Eleanor when she thought I wasn't listening. There was jealousy. Real, ugly jealousy." Michael felt pieces clicking. "Did Victoria ever talk about wanting Eleanor gone?" 6 months before I left, Victoria asked if I thought Nathan could manage without Eleanor. I told her removing Eleanor abruptly would be traumatic. She wasn't happy. A week later, she informed me my services were no longer needed." "She fired you for defending Eleanor?" I believe so. Victoria Thornton doesn't tolerate anyone standing between her and what she wants. Michael left with his mind racing. This wasn't just theft. This was a mother so jealous of her son's bond with his caregiver that she'd orchestrated an elaborate frame job to remove Eleanor permanently. But proving it was another matter. Michael spent another week digging. He discovered Diane had suddenly come into significant money after Eleanor's arrest, enough to buy a new car and put a down payment on a condo. When Michael tried to interview her, she refused and immediately lawyered up. He found the security technician responsible for maintaining cameras at the estate. The man, nervous and sweating, admitted he'd been asked to disable the camera in the servants' hallway that day, told it was for maintenance. He hadn't questioned it. Mrs. Thornton was his employer. Michael now had pieces, but needed something concrete, undeniable. Proof that would stand up in court. Then, 3 days before Eleanor's sentencing, Michael received a call that changed everything. "Mr. Chen, this is Robert Thornton. I need to speak with you. In person. Alone." They met in a parking garage downtown. Robert looked haggard and guilty, a man carrying a weight too heavy for too long. "My wife doesn't know I'm here," Robert began, voice shaking. "If she finds out, I don't know what she'll do. But I can't keep living with this. Eleanor didn't take that ring. Victoria had Diane plant it. I didn't know until after the arrest, I swear. But then I overheard them talking, Victoria and Diane, planning their testimony, making sure their stories matched." Michael's heart pounded. "Are you willing to testify?" "I don't know. Victoria, she's not well. Mentally. She's become obsessed with controlling Nathan, controlling everything. I'm afraid of what she might do if I expose her. Mr. Thornton, an innocent woman is about to be sentenced to years in prison for a crime your wife committed. You have to do the right thing." Robert's hands shook. "Nathan, I need to think about Nathan. If this comes out, if Victoria is arrested, what happens to him? What happens to him if Eleanor goes to prison? You said yourself he's bonded with her. Will he recover from losing her this way?" Robert closed his eyes. "I need time. I need to figure out how to protect my son. You have 3 days until sentencing. After that, it might be too late." Michael left with hope and frustration warring inside him. He had a witness, but a reluctant one. He needed more. That night, unable to sleep, Michael drove to the Thornton estate. He sat in his car across the street, watching the mansion, thinking through the case. He was about to leave when he saw something. A light came on in a third-floor window. A small figure appeared, pressing against the glass. Nathan. The boy stood at the window, looking out at the night. And Michael suddenly remembered what Eleanor had said. Nathan would wander the house at night when he couldn't sleep. Nathan who saw things others didn't notice. Nathan who was obsessed with patterns and routines. Nathan who might have seen something that day. The next morning, Michael filed an emergency motion arguing a critical witness hadn't been called during trial, a witness who may have observed relevant information. He was asking for permission to interview Nathan Thornton before sentencing. The Thorntons' lawyers fought viciously. Victoria appeared at the hearing, face a mask of outrage. "My son is a child with special needs. He doesn't understand what happened. This is exploitation." But Judge Chen, who'd been watching this case with growing unease as new information emerged, overruled the objection. "The court appoints a child psychologist to be present. Mr. Chen, you have 1 hour with the child in a neutral location with appropriate supervision. Use it wisely." The interview was arranged for the next day, in a child-friendly room at the courthouse, with Dr. Sarah Kim present to ensure Nathan's well-being. Michael arrived early, stomach twisted with nerves. Everything depended on this. Nathan was brought in by his father, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. The boy's eyes were downcast, hands fidgeting with a small object. Michael recognized it immediately. The blue stone Eleanor had given him. Nathan had kept it all this time. "Hi, Nathan." Michael said softly, sitting at the small table. "My name is Michael. I'm a friend of Eleanor's. Do you remember Eleanor?" Nathan didn't look up, but his rocking stopped. His fingers tightened around the stone. "Eleanor," he whispered. "Yes. Eleanor. She misses you very much. Nathan, I need to ask you about the day your mother's ring went missing. Do you remember that day?" Nathan began to rock again, breathing quickening. Dr. Kim leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, if this becomes too distressing—" "Wait," Robert said from near the door. "Nathan, it's okay. You can tell the truth. I promise it's okay." Nathan looked at his father, and something shifted in his expression. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tablet, the one Eleanor had mentioned he carried everywhere. With careful, deliberate movements, Nathan opened an app and began tapping through screens. "He records things," Robert said quietly. "Visual journals. His therapist suggested it to process his experiences." Nathan turned the tablet around. On the screen was a video, shot from a child's perspective, shaky and unfocused at times. But the content was crystal clear. The video showed the third-floor hallway outside Eleanor's room. The timestamp said September 15th, 1:30 p.m., after Eleanor had been taken for questioning, but before the formal search. In the video, Victoria appeared, looking around nervously. Behind her was Diane, carrying something small. They approached Eleanor's door. Diane entered while Victoria stood guard. Less than 2 minutes later, Diane emerged, empty-handed. They both left quickly. Nathan had filmed them from around a corner, probably without them knowing. The room fell silent. Dr. Kim's mouth was open. Robert had tears streaming down his face. Michael felt like his heart might explode. "Nathan," Michael said carefully, "did you show this to anyone before now?" Nathan shook his head. "Scared. Mom angry. Eleanor gone. Scared. You're very brave. You just helped Eleanor more than you can possibly know. Can I have this video?" Nathan looked at his father. Robert nodded, face a mixture of grief and resolution. "Give it to him, Nathan. It's time to do the right thing." The sentencing hearing was scheduled for the next morning, but it would never happen. Armed with Nathan's video and Robert's written statement, Michael filed an emergency motion to vacate the conviction. By midnight, he had affidavits from the security technician admitting he'd been ordered to disable the camera, bank records showing Diane's suspicious deposit, and phone records proving Victoria and Diane had been in frequent contact leading up to the theft. At 8 a.m., Judge Chen convened an emergency hearing. The courtroom was packed, reporters sensing something major. Eleanor was brought in from jail, confused and exhausted, told only that there were new developments. Victoria sat rigid at the prosecution table, her lawyer whispering urgently. Robert sat separately, Nathan beside him, the boy clutching his tablet like a lifeline. "Your Honor," Michael began, voice steady and strong, "I have evidence that will prove Eleanor Reed's innocence beyond any doubt. Evidence that will show she was the victim of a deliberate and malicious frame job orchestrated by Victoria Thornton." The next 30 minutes were explosive. Michael presented Nathan's video, playing it on the courtroom screen. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Victoria's face went white, then red. She stood suddenly. "That video is a fake. He doesn't understand what he recorded." "Mrs. Thornton," Judge Chen said sharply. "Sit down," Michael continued, laying out evidence piece by piece. The disabled camera, Diane's sudden wealth, Robert's testimony about overhearing the conspiracy, Dr. Walsh's witness statement about Victoria's jealousy. By the time he finished, the case was no longer about Eleanor's guilt. It was about Victoria's. Amanda Walsh, the prosecutor, looked shell-shocked. "Your Honor, in light of this new evidence, the people move to dismiss all charges against Eleanor Reed immediately." Judge Chen didn't hesitate. Motion granted. Ms. Reed, you are free to go. The court apologizes for the miscarriage of justice you have suffered. Furthermore, I am ordering the immediate arrest of Victoria Thornton and Diane Morrison on charges of conspiracy, evidence tampering, and perjury. The courtroom exploded. Victoria screamed as bailiffs approached. He's my son, mine. She was stealing him from me. I had to protect what was mine. Mrs. Thornton, you have the right to remain silent. A bailiff began, but Victoria was beyond hearing. She made him love her more than me. She turned him against me. I'm his mother. Robert closed his eyes in pain. Nathan, overwhelmed by noise and emotion, began to melt down, rocking violently and making distressed sounds. And then Eleanor was there. The guards had removed her handcuffs, and she moved past the chaos and knelt down in front of Nathan. Hey, sweetie, she said softly. It's okay. I'm here. I'm right here. Nathan's eyes snapped to her face. For a moment, everything else seemed to fade. Then the boy launched himself forward, wrapping his arms around Eleanor with strength that nearly knocked her over. Eleanor, he said, voice muffled against her shoulder. Eleanor came back. Eleanor held him, tears streaming down her face, body shaking with relief and joy and the release of weeks of terror. I came back, she whispered. I promised I would never leave you, and I came back. The guards escorted Victoria out, still screaming. He's mine! He's my son! You can't do this! I'm his mother! But Nathan didn't even look at her. He clung to Eleanor like she was the only solid thing in a world turned upside down. Robert approached slowly. I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped her. I should have known. I should have protected you. Eleanor looked up at him, still holding Nathan. You did the right thing in the end. That's what matters. I don't know if Nathan will ever forgive me for letting this happen. He will. Children forgive more easily than adults. You're his father. He needs you. You both need to heal from this. Michael Chen approached, his face split with the widest smile. Ms. Reed, you're free. Completely, totally free. Your record will be expunged. Eleanor shook her head. I don't want their money. I just want my life back. You'll get it, I promise. Eleanor was processed out, given back her belongings, including the blue and green bracelet. She slipped it back onto her wrist where it belonged. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Eleanor ignored them, walking with Nathan's hand in hers and Robert on her other side. Michael ran interference. Ms. Reed has no statement. The facts speak for themselves. An innocent woman was falsely accused and imprisoned because of a wealthy woman's jealousy. Justice has been served, but the damage cannot be easily undone. That evening, after Nathan had finally fallen asleep, exhausted, Eleanor sat with Robert in the library. What happens now? Victoria will face trial. The evidence is overwhelming. She'll likely go to prison for several years. I'm filing for divorce and full custody. I should have done it long ago. I was weak. I chose the easy path of pretending everything was fine, and you paid the price. What matters is the truth came out. Nathan was brave enough to share what he saw. You were brave enough to come forward. Eleanor, I want you to stay. Not as a maid. As Nathan's full-time caregiver, with proper salary and benefits. He needs you, and I think you need him too. Eleanor thought about it. The house held terrible memories now, but it also held Nathan, the boy who had saved her by being brave enough to show the truth. I'll stay, but things have to change. Nathan needs therapy, proper support, a father who is present and engaged. Can you do that? I can. I will. I promise. Over the next few weeks, life found a new rhythm. Victoria was held without bail, trial scheduled for 6 months out. Diane took a plea deal in exchange for testimony, admitting she'd been paid $50,000 to plant the ring. The story made national news, and Eleanor found herself briefly famous, interview requests pouring in. She declined them all except one, speaking with a magazine focused on justice reform. "I was lucky," Eleanor told the reporter. "I had Michael Chen who believed in me and fought for me. I had Nathan who was brave enough to show the truth. Most people in my situation don't get that lucky. They just disappear into the system and no one ever knows their story. The system is designed to process poor people efficiently, not to ensure justice. That has to change." The article ran with the headline, "When Justice Almost Failed, the Eleanor Reed Case." It sparked conversations about bail reform, quality of public defense, how wealth could manipulate the system. Michael used the publicity to grow his nonprofit, bringing in donations that allowed them to take on more cases. Nathan was thriving in ways Eleanor had hardly dared to hope. With Victoria's toxic presence removed, with therapy and support, and Eleanor's consistent care, he began to come out of his shell. He started speaking more, smiled more, even began to tolerate hugs from his father. 6 months after the trial, Patricia Sanderson, director of the Children's Advocacy Center downtown, approached Eleanor with a proposition. "We're starting a new program to provide support for special needs children in foster care and troubled homes. We need someone who understands these children, who can advocate for them. We'd like to offer you a position as Director of Special Needs Services." Eleanor was stunned. "I'm not qualified. I don't have formal training." "You have 8 years of experience with a complex special needs child. You've lived through the justice system and understand its failures. You have empathy and dedication that can't be taught. We can provide technical training. What we can't train is heart." Eleanor looked at Nathan, still absorbed in his puzzle. She thought about all the other children who needed someone to understand them, to fight for them, to see their value. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." Eleanor made her decision that night. She called Patricia the next morning and accepted. She would start in 2 months, after proper training. She would continue living at the estate, continuing her work with Nathan, but expanding her reach to help others. 1 year after Eleanor's arrest, the Children's Advocacy Center held a gala fundraiser. Eleanor attended in a simple blue dress, the same blue as Nathan's favorite color. She had been working with the center for 10 months, helping 23 children navigate systems often hostile to their needs, advocating for proper care, being the voice they needed when the world tried to silence them. Nathan came to the gala, his first big public event, staying close to Eleanor, uncomfortable with crowd and noise, but managing better than he would have a year ago. When Eleanor was called to the stage to receive an award for her advocacy work, Nathan watched from the audience, hands flapping in excitement, the way they did when he was happy. "A year ago," Eleanor said into the microphone, voice steady and strong, "I was in a jail cell, convicted of a crime I didn't commit, facing years in prison. I thought my life was over. I thought justice had failed me completely. But I was wrong. Justice didn't fail. It stumbled, it took a detour, it made mistakes. But in the end, truth prevailed because people fought for it. Michael Chen fought for it. Robert Thornton, despite his own pain, fought for it. And a 10-year-old autistic boy, terrified and overwhelmed, fought for it by being brave enough to show the world what he had witnessed. I received justice, but I was one of the lucky ones. Thousands of people are sitting in prisons right now for crimes they didn't commit. Thousands more are trapped in systems that don't see them, don't hear them, don't value them. That has to change. Every person deserves to be seen. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every child deserves an advocate who will fight for them the way Michael fought for me. That's the work we're doing here. That's the mission. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else if I can prevent it." The applause was thunderous. Eleanor stepped off stage and immediately went to Nathan, who reached for her hand. "Good speech," he said, words clear and certain. "Thank you, sweetheart." That night, Eleanor sat in her room at the estate, now comfortably furnished with her own belongings, her own touches. She was no longer the maid. She was family. She was Nathan's person. And she was finally, truly free. She looked at the blue and green bracelet on her wrist, worn now, some yarn fraying. She had thought about replacing it dozens of times, but Nathan wouldn't hear of it. This was the original, he insisted. This was the one that mattered. Eleanor understood. Some things, once broken, couldn't be replaced, only repaired. Some things, once tested, became stronger in the broken places. She had been broken by her ordeal, shattered by injustice and betrayal. But she had been repaired by truth and love and the courage of a little boy who refused to let a lie stand. And now, in the broken and healed places, she was stronger than she had ever been before. Eleanor turned off the light and looked out her window at the gardens below, peaceful in moonlight. Tomorrow she would wake up and continue the work of being their champion. Tomorrow she would fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Tomorrow she would be the voice for the voiceless. But tonight, she rested in the quiet knowledge that justice, though sometimes delayed, though sometimes stumbling in the dark, could still find its way to the light. Tonight, she was at peace. And that was the greatest victory of all.